This is the Bringing Business to Retail podcast with today's guest, Amanda Semenoff.
Welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast on SelenaKnight.com. Stay ahead of the competition by opening your doors to business experts so you can learn, grow, and be inspired. Passionate about bringing business strategies to independent retailers, please welcome your host, Selena Knight.
Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. You are in the right place if you own a retail store, have an e-commerce store, or you create and manufacture products. Basically, you sell stuff. If that's you, you are here today to learn, grow, and be inspired. With myself, a host of the show, Selena Knight, the retail strategist. I hope no matter where in the world you are, you have had a fantastic Easter. I hope you got a little bit of time off. You had some time to hang out with your family and friends. Perhaps you even ate a little bit of chocolate. Maybe you went out on an adventure and went Easter egg hunting. Or perhaps you simply went out and enjoyed the sunshine. No matter what you did, I hope that you are refreshed and recharged from a couple of days off. I know that I did have a couple of days off, but I have also been working on the webinar that is coming up in just 2 days' time. Even though it's ready well in advance, I always like to go back and double check. I go through and I register myself and I make sure my slide decks are great and I make sure that any of the offers are all working. So that's what I've been doing in the lead up to the webinar all about Facebook ads. If you haven't heard about it already, it is coming up in just 2 days. It is going to be on Friday. If you're in Sydney, it's Friday, the 6th of April at 10 a.m. And if you're in America, it's Thursday the 5th at 5 p.m. Pacific or 8 p.m. Easter. And if you have ever spent money on Facebook ads and even Instagram ads, if you've ever spent money on ads and they haven't performed, then you are likely doing one or all of these 3 big mistakes that I see retailers making that stop you from selling products. If you're investing money into ads, you need to be able to make money back. Otherwise, they're not working. Switch them off. So whether you're already running Facebook ads and you're seeing a small return, or you've been boosting posts or running ads and you just aren't getting any return on investment, I suggest that you join me on this free live masterclass. Yes, I will be there live to answer your questions, where I will show you the 3 biggest mistakes that I see retailers making that stop your ads from making money. Best of all, I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do in order to turn them around so that you can start having a positive ROI when you spend money on your Facebook ads. Now, why do I love Facebook ads so much when I've been saying over the last couple of months that they're getting really expensive? Well, yes, they are. And why are they getting expensive? Because lots of people have realized that you can do some amazing things in a really short period of time and get fantastic results with Facebook ads. So the reason that they've gone up in price is simply because more and more people are using them. There is more demand. And yes, you can always go out and use Pinterest ads and YouTube ads and Instagram ads to a lesser degree. Even those are going up really quickly. But the fact remains that Facebook ads are a really quick way to get in front of your audience and to be super, super targeted, which means when you're super targeted, that your ads are going to cost you less. So if you've been interested in Facebook ads, whether you're boosting posts or you're actually running ad campaigns, I suggest that you come and join me on this free live training. And you can register for free over at SelenaKnight.com/marketing. Now, there are only 100 seats available, so I highly suggest that if you are going to come to the webinar, you get in just a couple of minutes early to make sure that you have saved your seat, just because I know that this is going to be super popular. In fact, I already know it's super popular because I've seen the registrations. So if making more money from your Facebook ads is something that you'd like to achieve, head on over to selenaknight.com/marketing. Or if you're listening to this on your mobile device, simply click the registration link that is inside of the show notes, pop in your name and email, and you can save your spot. Now, today's guest is Amanda Semenoff. Nobody likes to deal with conflict. I don't know if there is anybody out there who looks at a situation that is a little bit icky, a little bit awkward, and says, yes, I want to jump right into that. Well, today's guest is Amanda Semenoff, and she might just be the exception to that rule. She's a civil mediator, a facilitator, and a conflict resolution consultant. But best of all, she helps businesses, people like startup companies, entrepreneurs, tech companies, and she helps them to thrive through conflict and change. She helps businesses address conflict in a way that actually builds them up instead of tearing them apart. So she is going to share some great tips for us today on how you can deal with those awkward moments. Now, specifically, we talk about team a lot here, and we throw in a couple of examples. I throw in a couple of examples that my clients have had. I even throw in some examples of my situation and working with my own team. And Amanda has some great strategies that she shares that she's implemented in other businesses. So I think you are going to love today's episode, especially if you've been feeling a little bit funky, a little out of place with your team, and know that you can actually fix these situations, especially if you grab hold of them and jump into them while they're still in the awkward phase, as Amanda calls it, rather than in the blow-up phase. Now, no one ever wants to confront conflict. I don't know about you, but even I, with my forthright manner, I kind of shy away from conflict. And I know that when I'm having a bad day, I quite often even preface it to my staff that, you know what, I'm having a bit of a bad day today. So if I'm a little bit cranky and snarky at you, just pull me up on it. Because at least then people know that it's not about them. Conflict is horrible. It's icky. It makes, I don't know about you, but it makes me feel tense, and it even makes me a little bit fearful, especially in the workplace, because I respect the people who work for me. But sometimes things just don't go right. And I heard a great definition of conflict. It's when expectations are not met. That's when conflict arises. And so I may have an expectation, and I think that I've communicated really clearly what I would like the outcome to be. And when the outcome is not that, it's easy to be angry and resentful. But it's time to actually appreciate that there's always going to be conflict, especially when you have teams that work remotely or teams that never see each other. If you've got rosters where your staff have to interact but they don't ever meet each other, that is an easy way to end up with conflict. So when we accept that there's always going to be conflict, and we actually look at how we can lessen that pain and stress which is caused by unresolved conflicts, when we do that, when we actually meet that conflict head on, in the right fashion, of course, that's when you end up with thriving culture in your workplace. A workplace where people just love to come to work, even if things aren't going perfectly. Throughout this month, you'll probably hear me talk quite a few times about my hiring process, and I'm pretty chuffed with this hiring process. Now, I'm the first person to admit this is my version of something that Brad Sugars put out many, many, many years ago, and I used his process and I tweaked it along the way until I had what worked for me in a retail store. And you're going to hear me mention it over the next few episodes. But I don't want you to think, Sal, what is it? You keep talking about this, you keep giving me examples, but I want to see it. So I'm going to share with you, I'm going to let you steal my complete job application documents. Yes, I'm going to share with you the exact documents that I used to hire my amazing marketing manager, Monica, and also my awesomely talented jack of all trades assistant. I mean, honestly, Mooks does a lot of stuff. So he doesn't have a title, just amazingly awesome assistant, Mooks. And I'm going to share, like I said, the exact job ads that I put out to lure them in to come and work with me, and also the application forms that they had to go through and decide whether or not they were the perfect fit for my business. And you can grab those for free over at selenaknight.com/hiring. So as if you are hiring your new team member. And when you download these, if you have them available over the next few episodes, you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about when I mention with these experts my hiring process and how you can implement it and adapt it into your retail store. In fact, this even went past me in my news feed on Facebook when one of my clients was using this exact same process to sell her retail business. And I was so impressed because the wording that she'd used and the system that I had used when she joined them together, it was the perfect ad to draw in the right person for her business. The exact kind of person who would love her business the way she had and take it to the next level. So if you want to grab that, head on over to selenaknight.com/hiring. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to do a great big shout out to the patrons of the show. Now, this is something that we implemented in episode 100, which is where my daughter Alana, who's 8, interviewed me and got a little bit obsessed with our dog. It's very funny. If you need to pick me up, go and listen to an 8-year-old get interviewed. But this show stays proudly independent, just like your retail store, because of people like you who pledge their support to keep it going. Now, putting this show together is not easy and it costs a lot of money. You know this. This is how business works, right? So I'm out there putting anywhere between 5 and 8 pieces of business strategy advice in your pocket or in your earbuds every single month, and you can pledge your support to keep the show alive. So I would love it if you would become a patron of the show. Simply head on over to selenaknight.com/patron and you can find the information there. Click the big button on the show notes if you would like to pledge your support, and jump into today's episode. Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. This week on the show, we have Amanda Semenoff, and she is going to be sharing with us some great tips on how to deal with conflict, which is something that comes up every single day in life and business. So welcome to the show, Amanda.
Hello, I'm happy to be here.
Hi, so conflict. We were just talking before we jumped on air about how Christmas can really bring out the stress in people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of those spaces that we find is that we often have underlying conflicts that have been going on. And then when we get really stressed, they tend to blow up. And so one of the things that I'm kind of excited to talk about is recognizing some of those conflicts in our workplaces before they explode, and sort of recognizing how much they cost us, even when they're in that kind of simmering space where they feel safe and we might think it's okay to avoid them for a little bit. And then to look at maybe what we can do about some of those and how we can resolve them to have more productive and better workplaces.
And that is so important. I know that whilst people are listening to this well after Christmas, we're just sitting here recording this just before Christmas, and I am a little bit stressed out. So I think for me, and tell me if this is what other people do, is you start to get really nitpicky about things because you have so much on your plate that all these things, like you said, that you would normally let slide, all of a sudden become really big issues. Is that common?
I think that's really common. I mean, what we find is that we allow things to slide when we're okay. So at home, at work, with our families, when we're feeling pretty okay, we have sort of the time and space to assume good intention. So when somebody does something, you're like, oh, they didn't mean to be a total jerk, right? They probably meant something by it and I'm interpreting it badly, or you explain away in your own head, if you have a positive relationship with that person, how they didn't really mean to do it. You assume they meant well. So, when your kids leave stuff lying around, when somebody doesn't close up a shop properly, when somebody cuts you off in traffic. When you're in a good mood and you're not stressed, you're like, oh, maybe they're in a really big hurry, or, maybe he just forgot because other stuff is going on in life. You'll allow some of those explanations that allow them to continue to be a good person in your mind. As soon as we get stressed, we start interpreting the things people do in a super negative frame, right? So that guy cut me off because he's a really terrible person, or my employee didn't lock up properly because they're lazy and useless. And we make this shift to deciding they're bad people when we in our head are explaining why they've done what they've done, because we like to write ourselves these stories about why people are acting the way they're acting.
Okay, this is a prime example for me right now. In fact, I actually started my meeting with one of my team yesterday with, I'm sorry if I snap at you today. I'm really, really stressed out and I'm really, really tired and I don't want to get cranky with you. But this is how I'm feeling right now. So if I do that, just call me out.
Well, I think that's a really good step, though, because what you've done is you've created a level of transparency so that then if you do snap at somebody or you are shorter and crankier than you would normally be, they're not assuming it's their fault. So everybody's been in a meeting where they get snapped at, and suddenly you're sitting there and you think that you have done something wrong. You're never like, oh, well, maybe they just didn't get enough sleep and this is a bit of a rub or a pinch of an interaction, or it's a space where it's a little bit difficult. So perhaps somebody's running late on a deadline and you're really frustrated about them running late on the deadline. And you might understand why they're running late, but you have no patience for it. And so you're being a little bit harsher than you would be if you weren't stressed out. And in that space, they can take it very personally and feel like you're attacking them for running late, or they can feel like you're really stressed out and you're upset at the thing that's going wrong. And those are two very different spaces for someone to have to sit in.
Yeah, I was going to say people are going to react really differently depending on whether they feel upset and persecuted or whether they feel almost empathetic that you're in this position.
And it makes a huge difference. So just that little shift in transparency that, I'm feeling stressed out right now allows people to see your frustration or your anger or your shortness as being part of you being stressed out and potentially as part of whatever the meeting is about. Perhaps there's a project that's gone off the rails, or, samples that came back and they're terrible, or something in your process isn't working, and they can see that frustration as being at the thing that's not working and not necessarily at the specific people at the table, and that allows them to be allies instead of enemies going forward.
Okay, so give us some tips on how to rectify this, because I'm sure that there are a lot of people out here, especially at this time of year, which, okay, you guys are listening to it a little bit later, but no matter what time of year you're listening to this, there's always going to be something that is picking at you. The kids, like you said, the kids aren't doing what they're supposed to, or someone cut you off in traffic. And those little triggers can just really set you up for a bad day.
Well, I think the first one is noticing that you've been triggered. So if you are grumpy, grouchy, and things are setting you off, is being like, whoa, okay, today I'm a little bit short. And once you've noticed that, you actually give yourself a lot of control over your own reactions. If you can be transparent, if you can say, wow, I am cranky today, and you can be kind of open about that, the first thing it does is it lowers your sort of rate of losing your temper. It kind of allows you a little bit more self-regulation, which is a big deal when dealing with conflict. And the second is to label it, and label it for people that have to interact with you on a significant time frame. So I'm not going to necessarily tell the person that, like the cashier where I'm checking out at a grocery store, that I'm in a really terrible mood, but I will perhaps let everybody know if I'm sitting down for a meeting, or if I'm going to have like a long conference call, or even when I'm getting home from a work meeting, I'm going to let my family know that, what, today's been really hard and I'm super cranky. And then they know that it's not about them. if I'm a little bit shorter, use slightly harsh language because it's a lot harder to clean stuff up after the fact than it is to get that out ahead of time. And then, kind of, the third piece that I think is sort of really key is in how you're seeing other people. So, when somebody really triggers you, we have this sense of labeling them as a terrible human being. That's something that we all tend to do. Somebody does something, and instead of saying, "Oh, I really don't like being cut off in traffic," I think that guy is, and insert
A
a whole bunch
jerk
of
face.
explicatives here, if you're driving, right? Or you sort of, instead of being like, "Wow, it's really important to me that the store gets closed up properly at night, and I don't like that it wasn't done properly," you think, "My employee is lazy and useless," right?
Oh,
And
yes.
so and so making that shift back to, we're not going to talk about who that person is. We're going to think about, what is the thing that is bothering me? What actual, like, behavior, like, is my caller or my call taker? Let's say I have an online retail business and I take customer care calls. And one of my employees at the call center is being too short with clients and it feels like they're being rude. So instead of being like, that person is rude and I don't want them interacting with my callers, we want to say, okay, so what is it about the way they're taking calls makes it feel rude to me? Are they too short? Are they not using proper, or what I think of as proper, sort of openings and endings to those calls? Are they not going that one level deeper? Are they not smiling because people can hear smiles? What is the piece that is missing that makes it feel rude? And once you know what the sort of behavior is that you want changed, then you can have a conversation with that person that's not personal. It's not attacking. It's not, "I need you to stop being rude with clients if you want to keep your job here." Because that is a conversation they don't know how to deal with, and it creates defensiveness. And it sounds very differently if you go in and you say, "You know what? It's really important to me that we maintain a positive brand experience for callers. And so I'd really like to hear kind of these three pieces of your conversation shift to look like this. What do you think about that?"
I was just trying to think, how would you frame that? And you did it so much better than I would have. Which is
That is
great because that's your job.
that is years of practice, that thinking of, how do we label a behavior instead of labeling a person, because we're never really sure what's going on in someone else's head or why they're behaving the way they're behaving, but what we see is behavior. And so we all think that people are like us, and if I was to do that, here's the list of reasons that I would do something like that, and generally it's because I don't like you or I don't care. And that's a very hard place to be. Whereas if you're thinking about, well, maybe culturally this person is behaving a way that's consistent with what they think of as professional, but that's not what professional means to me. And in that space, we may have to help people see what we actually want and what it looks like. And talking about, like, we need our customer experience to feel like this. And for it to feel like this, here's what I need you to do. Or here's what I'm seeing that isn't consistent with our overall goal of how customers feel when they are in our store or when they interact with our people.
I like it. I like it. Do you have any tips for how to get out of your own headspace before you have this conversation?
One is to take a little bit of time to kind of breathe and get clear about what it is that you actually need. So if you are calm, if you are pleasant, if you have gotten over that sort of initial feeling of anger or upset, because we work really hard to build our businesses, and when somebody does something that feels like it's counter to the success of our business, it can make us incredibly angry and incredibly upset very quickly, because these are things we've spent a lot of time on. And so to take that moment to actually take a deep breath, to be curious a little bit about why they would have done that, because chances are your employee does not intend to sabotage you. Right? Like, that's not normal. Normally, they're just trying to do their job. And if their environment is positive and they feel supported and they feel like you actually care about them in the workplace and them doing a good job, chances are they want to do a good job. People like to think that they are good people. They like to behave in ways that are consistent with their self-concept of being hardworking, reliable, good people. And so when we see something that doesn't sit with that self-perception, generally the question is, what's going on for them that they're not seeing this job the way I'm seeing this job? So in there somewhere is a disconnect. And if you can figure out what that is, you have the solution to your problem.
Okay, that is so good, because here is something that I have learned after nearly a decade of having people work for me is when it all goes pear-shaped, the first question I ask, and I know that my editor listens to this and he will go, yes, she's done this to me, is if
Mm-hmm.
it's all going pear-shaped, I literally just send an email and say, hey, are you okay? Because normally you would have things to me on time and you'd be chasing me up, for example. But I've noticed that lately, you aren't your usual self. Are you okay? Because, like you said, usually there is something else going on in the background, and the people who work for you aren't trying to sabotage you. In 99.9% of the cases,
Mm-hmm.
there could be something else going on at home. And, it did turn out that there was something. He wrote back to me and said, this is, I'm really sorry you feel that way, is actually what he said. And then he went on to explain some things that were happening in his life. So I'm like, right, it's got nothing to do with me. It's, just some personal stuff happening. And so I said, right, okay, so what can we do to try and, ease a bit of workload off you so that you feel okay with how much you have to do? And I think when you really recognize that, so if somebody's behavior is out of the norm, it's probably because something else is going on in their lives. And instead of getting snappy about it, maybe just call in and say, are you okay?
Yeah, that's really key, that noticing that something isn't normal and then checking in with curiosity because it's not normal. And so something has happened. And wanting to know what has happened is a very different space than being like, hey, you're late. What gives? Right? Like that kind of, I'm really curious, this isn't normal, what's going on? But we often don't have such deep relationships with people that we know what normal is. So it's great if you have a small retail team and you say you have a couple of key employees and you're really close with them, and so you can notice when something is out of the normal, when somebody is slipping up, when something is obviously going on because someone is making a series of mistakes that they wouldn't normally make. But what if all you've noticed is the mistakes because you don't have enough of a relationship with them? And so in that space, we need to deal with it where we can't be like, what's going on? This isn't normal. What we have to be able to say is, I'm noticing these issues, and it's really important to me that this doesn't happen because this is how this impacts our customer. And so this sort of two kind of spaces where you're not talking about what the person's who the person is, but you're talking about what what the issue is and its impact on customers, and then this discussion that is like, I trust that you're in this business with the intention of getting stuff right, or you're in this job with the hope of being able to do this work properly. And so what do you need to actually do the job right? Like, why are these mistakes coming up? And sometimes they're really simple things that we haven't thought of before. So if you've hired a scheduler for the first time, but you haven't quite explained what buffers you need around certain types of, like, let's say maybe, they're scheduling all of your buying meetings, but you need 15 minutes before certain meetings, but half an hour before other ones to prepare for them properly. But you didn't tell them, they'll schedule everything too closely together. So maybe there's information missing, or maybe they don't have certain keys or certain skills. You might not have quite hired the right person. Right? There's lots of things that can have gone wrong in their onboarding process, which sits them in a place where they can't actually do the job you're asking them to do.
And did you think that sometimes we refuse to kind of go a bit deeper because the problem could be ourselves? The problem is we didn't onboard that staff member properly. The problem is we didn't write a process for that. The problem is that we didn't hire the right person. So instead of accepting that we've not done something correctly, we just lash out on their actions instead?
Well, I think that's actually very common. I think one of the pieces is that often you hire because you're out of time, or you hire because you're exhausted, or you hire because you're out of skills. And so often when we're bringing an extra person in, or we're farming out a piece of work to somebody else, we're doing that once we have so much time pressure that we don't necessarily even realize we just need help. So I need somebody to do opening and closing. They need to show up right now, and I don't have time to necessarily onboard them properly. And this is another one of those kind of key places where dealing with stuff earlier is way easier than dealing with stuff later. That if you write that key process, then you don't have these months of minor issues that come out in a major issue. And it is often the work that we have not yet done, or things that we didn't actually see and realize were problems. We are very good at the things we do ourselves. And to the point that we kind of assume often that everybody can do those things that come very naturally to us.
Oh, yes. Hand up.
Right.
Yes, that's me.
Right. So, if you're an extrovert, you assume that everybody in the world likes to be dealt with like an extrovert. If you're an introvert, you assume nobody wants that phone call, right? If you are very, very good at talking to customers, you will assume that everybody's going to be really good at that kind of key piece. If you are incredibly clean and you like wipe everything down, you don't even think about what actually needs to be wiped down because you just clean every surface every day without thinking about it. It can often be very hard to describe what you do to someone else so that they would do it correctly.
Can I jump in and say that I am 100% on board with what you're saying? And I recently had a client who had very, very similar situation. And I said to her, go and get your team member to write the process themselves. And she did. And when it came back, she's like, but all these steps were missing. And I said, great. But now you know where the problem is. Yeah, the problem was actually that she hadn't shown her how to do the job correctly. But now you can sit down and say, well, this was a great start, but what I would like to see is we'll include this here and we'll include this here. And if we get this done in here, we won't have to do it in the afternoon. So I think almost like giving them some permission to be okay with what they're doing and saying, hey, I just want you to write down how you see it. And then when you look at that, you can go, right, there's a disconnect there. For whatever reason it was, there's a disconnect. So now we know what to address. It's not about the person, it's about the action.
That's very, very true. And the earlier we address that disconnect, the less likely it is to become toxic.
Definitely, definitely.
So, and it's one of those really interesting things that we see over and over and over in conflict. They say that, good people don't leave bad jobs, good people leave bad bosses.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So we hear that over and over and over again. And so if you're seeing like in your space, you happen to have high turnover, there's that kind of space where you're like, why do we have high turnover? Like, what is going on here? And I've always really liked that quote because I'm like, what is a bad boss? Right? Because people always have this concept of like what a bad boss looks like. And I'm always sitting there and I'm like, but it's not. Most people would never label themselves as a bad boss. So what's actually going on there? Are people like, have you given them the autonomy people need? Like, do you trust them enough to actually do the job you've laid out to do? Do you see them as being capable? If they're not capable, why aren't they capable? Like, if we've forgotten to delegate appropriately, like what are the pieces that are missing? And how do we have the conversations with them? Because there's nothing like having somebody walk around behind you and critique what you do all day. I mean, that is brutal. But equally difficult on the other side is when you never get any feedback at all.
Yes, definitely.
I don't quite feel like I'm doing my job properly, but nobody ever tells me what to do. And it's amazing how often we sit on one side or the other side of that. So we'll walk around and we'll critique all the time and they'll just never quite get to right because however we're saying what we're saying, it's not in a way they can hear us, or it's not in a way where the opposite is obvious. So like, I coach a lot of ice hockey, and one of the things that we have to think about is that we can't tell kids what not to do. We have to tell them what to do, because they can't hear us. So if I say, oh, you shouldn't do it that way, the child can't actually integrate that behavior. So if I'm like, okay, you can't squeeze your stick, they don't understand how to not do that. It's really hard to, the negative space is really hard to feel. We have to tell them is, okay, so you need to like loosen your bottom hand and, roll your shoulders back and sink into your knees a little bit more. That's something they can do. And when we think about employees, that's something else that it's like, you can't leave the store filthy is not something that they can necessarily enact. But it's really important to us that we wipe all the counters down at the end of the day, sweep up and shake the mats out. Well, that's something they can do. And so in that thinking about like, how are we communicating what needs to be done? Is it in negative space where they then have to figure out what the opposite is? Or is it in a positive space where it's something that they can then go and accomplish?
Yes, and I like that example because you didn't even say we have to leave the shop clean, because your definition of clean may well be a lot higher than my definition of clean. and is clean tidy? Those two things aren't necessarily the same, especially to someone who is really fussy about clean and tidy. So I think the specificity, I can never say that word, being specific is really important, like you said, in terms of having somebody know what it is that you want them to achieve, what the outcome should be, because otherwise they'll be like, well, I think I'm doing it okay. Nobody's told me I'm not, so I'll just continue doing it along. And meanwhile, you're sitting there going, oh, can't you see that you have to vacuum at the end of each day?
Well, and then what does that mean, right? I mean, you could say, it's really important that we vacuum at the end of each day, but vacuum what? Vacuum where? Vacuum for how long? Right? Like what is it that needs to be accomplished at the end of the day? Because I could vacuum the entryway every day and never make it into the corner that gets filthy.
Yes.
Right? And so those kind of pieces of, if it's not being done, like what is it that's not being done? But even if we get the perfect employee that fully understands exactly what we expect of them and everything is going along and it seems very smooth, you'll still get those spaces where they either are doing stuff that bugs you or something has happened, or perhaps you have an interaction between two employees that's negative, and sometimes it's misunderstanding. Sometimes it's actually very deeply rooted conflict spaces that if we don't uncover them a little bit and figure out how we're going to work together, that things may still go very, very badly in the workspace. And we've all felt those spaces. Those are stores that you walk into, you stand in for a moment, you turn around and walk back out of, because you can cut the tension with a knife. You've got two people on the floor that obviously hate one another, and no one wants to be in that space. And it could be that they're on opposite sides of some very key, very visceral political issues, and watching, I'm in Canada, and so watching the US, there's a lot of deep divisions and a lot of people who are very upset on both sides. And yet at the same time, they're both humans. And so we can have sometimes some of those pieces of deeper conflicts, of ideological issues, of deeply held beliefs that conflict with the other people in our workspace. And that can be on all kinds of grounds that we say, oh, we don't bring these to work, but they come up in work sometimes and can be very, very divisive. And then the question is, like, can we have those safe conversations and have those kind of in a way that allows those people to work together positively and have had that kind of rehumanizing conversation to be able to leave those controversies behind and do the work in a positive way?
How do you do that? Can you give us some tips on how you manage when it is that bad?
Well, often the first thing is to label that it is that bad, because people often walk around on eggshells not wanting to say anything, right? So something has happened and it has often just slowly ratcheted up. Perhaps you found out that somebody in your workplace voted in a way that you find like deeply offensive, but you haven't said anything. And then, you happen to, in a kind of passive aggressive way, leave out some stuff that lets them know that you're on the other side. And it slowly gets more and more tense without necessarily anybody ever actually saying anything. And as a manager or an owner, the kind of first piece I think is to have a conversation with each of the people that you're noticing this with and just say, hey, what's up? Right? Like it feels really tense when I walk in. Do you know what's going on? And leaving a sort of an openness for that conversation of what's going on here. And they'll tell you a whole bunch of stuff. And the first probably 2/3 of it is rationalizing why they feel so terrible in the space. It'll be, they're a terrible human being. I can't stand working with them. Often, if they're willing to talk at all, it's kind of in that like big blown up kind of space. And what we really want to do is we want to get people to talk down to kind of real pieces. So what is going on? And if they can actually like label and bring out examples, the problem starts to shrink. And so we'll see that lots of times where, it maybe started with like, I was really offended about, this voting space and I'm really upset. And part of it'll be, I'm really upset about the election. Okay, so you're really upset about the election. What does that have to do with, with the other people we work with? And we try not to bring politics to the workspace. So like, what is going on here? And then they'll talk a little bit about how they feel perhaps unsupported, or maybe there's some other kind of little policies that were working just fine when everybody was getting along, but maybe now how we share commissions is a problem because we're not getting along. And so, okay, so now that we're not getting along, this other structure is broken. Okay, well, would you be comfortable sitting down and having a group dialogue, because this isn't working and we can't continue like this? And then you talk to each person that's in this space of really not being okay, and you kind of lay out what the issues are. And then I if I was running it, would pull everybody together and go, hey, I've had the chance to talk with everybody and I'm hearing these are some of the problems that we've been having. How do we solve this as a group? And really bring them together around that common theme of, we want to keep our jobs. We like working here, right? It's important to us that this is a decent place to work. And given this current state, how are we going to do that? And you can allow people to be upset. Like, it's okay that people disagree about stuff. Like, that's okay. Where it's not okay is when it's making it a hard place to work. And when people are dreading coming to work in the morning, that's where it's not okay. So how do you make that feel safe again for everybody?
Does it ever get to the point where you just have to let somebody go? Do you think there's ever a make or break point? It's just, we've tried this and we've tried that and this person just isn't a good fit. Or do you think you can always resolve the problems?
I think often a resolution looks like someone leaving. Right. And so is that often through these processes, people will figure out that they're not a good fit themselves and that they actually maybe should leave. Like that definitely occurs where, maybe that person is really, really grumpy because they don't actually want to be here. Right.
True.
I mean, that happens, right? Somebody's in a job that, they'd always wanted to do something else and they've been afraid of taking that step. And so they are here and they're working, they're bringing a paycheck home, and there's a fear element about transitioning out. And it's being taken out on their coworkers. That definitely occurs where somebody isn't a good fit, or they've outgrown their role. So somebody's been in the same role for a very long time. They've learned everything that they can learn. It's no longer interesting.
Yeah, they're just bored.
They're really bored, and they're taking it out on the people they work with or on their customers. And you see that. And so then the question is if you really like this person, if they're amazingly good employees, how do you give them more responsibility and grow their skill set? Do they need some training? Do they need some more responsibility? Is there something that they could do? Is there a project you can give them? Is there a space where that works within the company, or is it a time to embrace them and let them go on great terms? Because that also happens. So it is amazing to support somebody to transition elsewhere in a way that is really positive. So if somebody is really bored at your company, they're starting to hate their job, they need to leave, they always leave way later than they should. They should have left 6 months ago usually, right? That space where they're not happy, you're not happy, and they're leaving also means that if they're going to talk to their friends, their relatives, their network about your business, it's not in good space. Whereas if you have those conversations early, well, somebody's like obviously not happy in the job, but you can support them leaving, say, hey, you don't seem really happy. What is it that you need to transition out of here? Right? Like, do you need like 2 weeks and another job? Like, where is that going? What do you need? What do you want? Maybe they've applied to school and they haven't told you because they're nervous. And is that a space where you can be excited for them, that they might be onto something new and big? Or is that a space where you're terrified of losing them, or maybe something in the middle? And often you can work other things out where you have a really good employee, they're thinking of going back to school, but maybe they still want to do 10 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week, and you would love to keep them. Right? There's lots of options once we have those conversations. And somebody leaving on really positive terms is an ambassador for your company going forward, who will recommend good people to come work for you in the future. Right? I had a great job when I was a teenager, and I loved it beyond anything. They were amazing. I worked there for 3 years. It wasn't a fit for me once I had, my college degree and was moving on. But I've consistently recommended to younger cousins and to friends' children that maybe they look there to work, because it was an amazing experience for me. It would probably be fabulous for them. I'm sending them good people.
It's funny that you say that, because when I had my stores, I always looked at myself as a conduit. I had this knack for being able to find amazing women, and not that I didn't want men, it was just that women came to the jobs, who wanted to return to the workforce after having children. And they just didn't have the confidence to go back into corporate jobs. Sometimes they'd been out of the workforce, 5-7 years. And I really quickly discovered that they would come to work with me for like 2 to 3 years, and they would feel so empowered afterwards because they'd learned all these little new skills, because that happens when you give people autonomy. And when you're in small business, you can do that. You can let them dabble in social media. You can let them write blog posts. You can let them take photos, all these little hidden superpowers that they have. And then they're so confident, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, that they can feel okay going back into the corporate world. And you should be really happy for them when they do that. Don't take it as a personal affront. I was always so proud of how, you can hear it in my voice, so proud of how far they'd come, that when they left, it was always really sad. But I was just so excited for them that they found, a whole new life because they'd worked with me in my store.
And if you can make that open and positive and supportive, that transition out, so that kind of offboarding process, if that can be super positive, if you can have those kind of conversations early, then you can maintain those connections with people that are often then in allied fields as these really positive network connections that you have ongoing that are incredibly valuable for your business in the long run.
Yeah, it just takes looking at it in a different way, which is what you've been saying all along.
But it's interesting, one of those kind of spaces where you can have like small issues with employees. Like, let's say you bring in somebody new and they're fabulous and you love them and they really enjoy photography and social media, and what you're finding is that they're doing more and more and more social media marketing and less and less of whatever you originally hired them to do. And that other job was actually really important to you. Right? And you kind of have this, but you've let it slide maybe a little bit too long, and now it's an awkward conversation. And so what I see with a lot of people that contact me is they sit in one of two camps, is that they either are afraid to have that conversation, or that conversation was had and went really badly, and now they're kind of trying to pick up the pieces of like, so I needed them to do their original job, but I didn't communicate it very well, and now our relationship has been damaged a little bit. Or they keep trying to have this conversation, but there's some kind of, a lot of us are conflict avoiders. We don't like having hard conversations. There's a fear there. And so what they need to have that slightly awkward conversation. And the sooner you have it, the more likely it is to be an awkward conversation and not a toxic conversation, is that, so this was your original job and this is where we are now. And so that conversation can be a little bit tricky, when you're sort of seeing that an employee has flourished in one area, but it's not necessarily an area your business needs. Maybe social marketing is a little bit is useful for you, but you don't get returns on it after. I definitely notice for me, a little bit of social is good, and a lot of social is no more useful than a little bit of social.
Very true.
And so, I mean, for other businesses, that model will be very different. But, maybe, a couple hours a week is all you need them to do social, but they're at half the job. And so, how do you have that sort of recalibration conversation when you know that this is what they love? They're obviously really into this part and not so much into these other pieces. And that conversation can feel really scary, especially if you don't have a lot of practice having those kinds of conversations. And so there's kind of a few keys to sort of making it go as well as possible. And I think the first one is to actually schedule it for yourself and for them so that you're going to have it. That allows you to make sure it gets done, and it gets done earlier instead of later, because it's really easy to intend to talk to them the next time you see them. Oh, we'll do it. I'll be in on Thursday. They'll be in on Thursday. We'll do it Thursday morning. And then Thursday morning comes and there's other stuff that's busy and you don't really want to have it. And so you just put it off a week. But once you've put it off 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times, not only has the situation become normal, so that pattern's harder to break, but your emotion around it has gotten bigger.
Yes, because they didn't know that this was a problem. But meanwhile, it's festering for you.
And as it festers, the chances that you can have that conversation in a way that's positive gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Right? And if you don't schedule it, the chances that conversation starts as a blow up gets higher and higher.
You are really putting us on the spot here, aren't you? You're saying it is time to be responsible. It is time to be a business owner. It is time to just man up or woman up and tackle these things before they become a huge issue.
You have to embrace them when they're awkward before they get toxic. We do that with cash flow. We do that with product alignment. We do that in all kinds of places. And one of the keys is in our conflict spaces. So there's something that's awkward and you can feel it. You can feel it in your gut when you're like, you don't really want to talk about it. Like that's exactly when you have to come up with a plan for yourself to deal with it.
Do you think, I'm just trying to think of some examples here of some of my clients that I know have gone through all of this year. Do you think that you're going too far when you start to, I was going to say regulate people, but that's not what I mean. But I mean, really making them accountable for what it is they're doing. So, saying how much time does it take for you to do this? And I'm just thinking one of my clients did the process thing and asked one of their staff to write down the process and then also asked how long it took. And when she looked at what they'd done in the time, she was a little bit upset because she was thinking, but that shouldn't take you that long. So for her, it was, not only are you not doing the job correctly, but you're doing it in a much longer time frame. So we did go back and have that conversation of, well, this is your process, but this is what we want the process to look like. And we want you to do this in the same amount of time. So do you think you can do that? Or is that like stage 2? Do you think you have the conversation first and then you bring in the regulation, for want of a better word?
Well, I think you have to be really clear with yourself and with them as to why you think you need regulation and what its purpose is. So if you need regulation because you don't trust them, then the problem is trust. The problem isn't the regulation, and no amount of regulation will build trust.
Interesting.
You cannot regulate trust.
No.
Right? And so if you need to be like, let's say we are growing and we need to know what our processes is so that they can be standardized, so we can bring somebody in to help you, so we know if you're too busy what processes to offload. That's a very different reason to have some sort of standardized processes. If we're looking at what are your skills, what are you good at, what are you really efficient at, what do you like, what would you like to do more of, where maybe should somebody else take over? I'm really good at a certain set of processes and really not as good at another set of processes. I hate them. They take me forever. And so if I'm going to offload something, if you were to kind of look at what I do in my business, the best places for me to offload are those places I'm inefficient.
Of course.
And so if we're really clear about why we want regulations, processes, if we want timestamps for things, like what is our purpose in wanting those things, then it's much easier to have those kinds of conversations with somebody where we're at kind of the root of what it is, and we're likely to get things that are actually useful for what we want them for. So if I need to know what the details of your job are because I'm not there and I don't always understand what you do, that's a very different piece. I work with a lot of tech groups, and you'll often have somebody in sales and somebody that's a coder. And those two people do not understand one another's jobs
That's my
at
husband's
all.
job.
Like, not at all. Like, they don't understand one another's jobs at all. And so some of that process pieces and what takes how long is about understanding what the other people do in the organization so that they can actually appropriately value one another's skill sets when they come down to talking about who gets how much money, right? They can do an appropriate split of assets or of interests in a business because now they actually understand who does what for how long. Or, maybe they can figure out which pieces are appropriate to farm out to another organization. If you have, like, I've worked a little bit with a local bakery, and one of the things that they found is that one of their people who was incredibly good at bread was taking forever to ice things, and they hired somebody else to just do icing. Right?
Wow, that's a big step, isn't it?
It's huge. They were at the point where they knew they needed to hire another person. And so they were trying to figure out what that extra person should, and they were just going to hire a general baker, and a general baker does all the things. And they decided actually to split the roles and specialize once they did a process analysis of one of their employees who is now doing stuff they like more. And stuff they like less, aren't as good at, or a little bit less confident about, has been given to the new person who came in who thinks that's amazing, right? So
I was going to say that's really key to know, just going back to what you said a few minutes ago about knowing why you want to regulate someone. And I'm thinking, I've got a couple of examples going through my mind, and I think a lot of the time it's that you feel like you've lost the trust. But in this situation, yes, they were open-minded and they were like, right, it's not that you're slacking off. It's just simply you're not good at this thing. It's not your forte.
Well, and there's other pieces and there's other reasons that we can want stuff. So let's say we have business insurance. We might, for our overnight vandalism and theft insurance to work, have to have our premises locked up every night in a specific way and be able to confirm that, so that if something happens overnight, the insurance covers you, right? I might need to know that you did this exactly correctly and signed it off so I can prove to a third party that it was done properly. And that's not about micromanaging somebody. That's about, I need this in case something goes wrong. And so a lot of it is about, like, why do we actually need to have whatever it is done? And trust is an interesting piece. Like, when there's been a breakdown in trust and a breakdown in relationship, often it's about these kind of little things that haven't been going right for a long time. And so what you don't actually necessarily need, like, certain kinds of, process regulation. You need to know that they're going to do their job to the best of their ability. And for some reason, that's not occurring. And so it may be that they have stuff going on in their background of their life again. Like, we're back to that piece. Or maybe they don't want to work here anymore. Or maybe, they don't have the tools to do the job right. And so you're seeing that somebody is doing 4 hours of social media work a day. Well, maybe it's time to get them, a social media managing set of software and cut that down to 45 minutes. Or like, a lot of times when people's, like, when things don't look right, sometimes it's our tools.
Definitely. I know tools are they're one of those things that just can make your life so much easier and so much harder. Now, you have just shared so much, so I'm going to finish it up there before we can run down that rabbit hole of many, many conversations. But I think that is the perfect opportunity to just appreciate that we don't always sometimes we take things at face value, and sometimes we need to dig a little bit deeper. And if people need some help with that, you are the go-to person. So if someone is finding that their workspace is a little bit stressed out and they need some conflict help, or even if their home space is a little bit off kilter, where can we find you?
So you can find me online at mindfulresolution.ca or Amanda Semenoff. There aren't that many of us in the world. Google usually finds me pretty quickly. And then I put together a special offer for your listeners. So if you go to mindfulresolution.ca/Selena, you'll see just a little landing page where you can book a conflict consultation. I do 30-minute consultation is always free, because I have to know a lot more about your business before we can figure out what you actually need. But any type of conflict resolution services booked during that conversation will be 10% off for your listeners.
Oh, that is very generous. Thank you. Now I have one last little series of questions for you, which is, are you an in-store shopper or an online shopper?
Ooh, I am an online shopper if I don't care about the product.
Ooh, okay. So let's skip that and go to, what is your favorite store?
Oh, my absolute favorite store right now is our local little Italian bakery. I love them.
Ooh, yum. Why? Tell us why you love them.
Well, not only is their store beautifully laid out, and it's all full of yummy, but they are just really fabulous. So they know my kids' names. They always are happy to have us in there. And then the product is incredibly high quality. So we can get like lovely Italian breads and other sorts of things that aren't that easy to find sometimes. So it's that nice combination of like local and lovely and hard to find good quality stuff.
A true destination store.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much. I always love to know what makes people go back to shops again and again. And that's it. You just said being unique, being somewhere that people really want to go and hang out. That is what I preach to people, is if you be that kind of store, then people will always come back again and again.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for all that you've had to share, and I'll make sure to put not only your website up but also the link to that special offer that you've got for people who might need that 30-minute call and might even need your services.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. You can find all of the show notes over at selenaknight.com. If you found something that you heard today particularly useful, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or Stitcher. And of course, feel free to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit by listening to it. Want more retail biz strategies? You can watch the Bringing Business to Retail TV show, where each week I'll answer a question or provide you with a simple, actionable retail biz strategy that you can implement in your business right away. If you have a question or a guest, I'd love to hear from you. Drop my team an email at podcast@selenaknight.com, and I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great week.